Hello everyone, it's Brian here in Toronto, and today I thought I would present a video containing 10 of my favorite EPs or extended plays. Now, it's always risky to do because I feel that in a month or two I might think of something else that should have been in this list. I went through a long list of the ones I had. I settled on these 10, but this is not necessarily gospel. I may change my mind. And I focused on 12-inch versions rather than 7-inch. I do have some 7-inch EPs, but I've always been more interested in 12-inch records, so we have 12-inch ones here in every case. So I did look at the definitions of EP because I wanted to be sure that we're on the same page. And of course, it says in everywhere I looked, have fewer tracks than an album, and they tend to be 15 minutes to 30 minutes long, which I agree with. There was a funny statement in the Wikipedia entry which said that they tend to be less cohesive and less committal than an album, which kind of made me chuckle a bit, but I think they're maybe onto something, or it may be, well, they could be onto something. Now, so I have 10 here. Let's go through them, and I'm going to start with this one in the number 10th position. This is Billy Bragg, Help Save the Youth of America, subtitled Live and Dubious, which also makes me laugh. Now, thinking back to that statement in Wikipedia that they're less cohesive, this is an example of a very cohesive EP because it's entirely political. So we have 6-track EP, Billy Bragg, and Billy's dressed there looking rather Russian in his Russian hat and the Russian text behind him. This is the reverse, and you see Billy on a train there with a red star, another sort of socialist image, I suppose, with the salute there. This has a statement that's directed towards the American public. And I'll just read the first line. Beloved listener, well may you ask, why is this limey whining on about our country when it's nothing to do with him? He goes on to talk about presidential elections. And last statement is hilarious. Remember, when you elect a president, you are electing a president for all of us. Please be more careful this time. So that's obviously a reference to the second Reagan victory in 1984. This came out in 1988. Before the 1988 presidential elections, right before he released Workers' Playtime. And it is a really excellent and cohesive EP with one exception on here. So what can I say about this? Well, it starts with Help Save the Youth of America, which I think is a very good political track. It's from Talking with the Taxman About Poetry. Really good version there. Think Again is one of the best tracks on this EP. It's a cover version of a track by Dick Goffin, the Scottish singer-songwriter, and I think Billy's version is better than the original. It's a kind of a philosophical look at, what the Russians really want another war, given what happened to them in the last one in World War II, where so many had died. So it's a really excellent song, thought-provoking song. On the other hand, we have possibly my least favorite Billy Bragg song of all time, and that's Chile, Your Waters Run Red Through Soweto. Not necessarily the message, but the delivery. It's a cover version, and he sings it a cappella. He's done this before. There's tracks like Tender Comrade, and every single a cappella Billy Bragg song I detest. I think they're awful. I don't think he has the voice to pull it off, and it's really irritating. Side 2 starts with Days Like These, the DC remix. Of course, that's a remade version of Days Like These, which appeared on an earlier 12-inch single. This is excellent. It's really focused on the United States in this version. It's anti-Reagan. It's a cool track. The Have and Have Not is a classic Billy Bragg song in which he sings, "Just because I'm dressed like this doesn't mean I'm a communist." And he finishes with There's Power in a Union with the Pattersons, his classic pro-union track. So all in all, a really good EP. And I wanted to show you this just because it's sitting here. This is the compact disc version of that release. And, I've been lucky to meet Billy on 4 or 5 occasions. He signed this for me. Otherwise, this is identical to the vinyl, except I remembered this register to vote information here. And on the back, there is a brief essay from Billy in which he talks about the state of the world, cynicism in politics, political participation, the process, democracy, and registering to vote. And at the end he says, I haven't read this in a very long time, democracy without responsibility is not democracy. In the end, the youth of America can only save themselves. So can we help save the youth of America? Maybe. This one is number 9. Now that was 19 minutes and 52 seconds. I don't know why I'm telling you the times. This one's 16 minutes and 42 seconds. The Pogues, Poetry in Motion from 1986, produced by Elvis Costello. This has a really cool image on the back of the band in front of a giant picture of Mount Rushmore, so another American tie-in here. And this has 4 classic Pogues track, including London. Did I say it was called Poetry in Motion? I can't remember. London Girl, great. The Body of an American. You know, I've always loved that song, but I like it even more having watched The Wire on HBO because it is used many times to great effect in that show. Rainy Night in Soho is another Pogue song that is a favorite of mine, but it takes on maybe a little added meaning now because at Shane MacGowan's funeral, Nick Cave sang that song. Playing Stenoa Hill, I believe, is the Pogues' response to some criticism that they were disrespecting traditional Irish music or something like that. Anyway, this is a solid collection of 4 tracks that I don't think are lacking in cohesion. So these MCA labels. This one, there are a few people, perhaps in Canada and other places, who will know exactly what this is when they see it. This is, by the way, this is raised Hebrew text, which means formless and empty. And this is a 1999 EP from the godfathers of post-rock, Godspeed You Black Emperor, out of Montreal. It's called Slow Riot for New Zero Canada, spelled with a K. My first copy of this was on CD, but I later found the vinyl copy, and this is from the Constellation record label. As I keep saying, one of my favorite record labels, possibly my favorite record label in Canada. This is the inner sleeve with some more Hebrew, some liner notes. This has only 2 tracks. It runs a total of 28 minutes and 36 seconds. Side A is a 10 minute and 52 second track, I think 10:52, called Moya, which is a reworking of Gorecki's 3rd Symphony. And side 2 is called BBF3, which runs for almost 18 minutes. And it is, according to the liner notes, BBF3 stands for Blaise Bailey Finnegan III. And apparently he was tape recorded on a sidewalk in Providence, Rhode Island. He was saying that he was reading a poem that he'd written, but in actuality, he was reciting the lyrics to Virus, a song by Iron Maiden. So they included some of that spoken word element on side 2 here. I would make the claim that that is the best Canadian EP of all time. There's only one other Canadian EP in this stack, but I'd say that was the best one. So we're at number 7, 20 minutes and 26 seconds. REM's Chronic Town, their debut 12-inch from 1982. They had released a single before this, but this is the first collection that they put out, 5 tracks. And the 5 tracks are 1 Million, Stumble, Wolves Lower, Gardening at Night, Carnival of Sorts, bracket, Boxcars. So this, of course, has the very early REM sound. Of course, I've liked REM right through their entire career, but I prefer the earlier records, the first few records, and this sort of fits into that sound. And I've always loved this album cover. This is on IRS. Of course, later they went to a bigger label, as I recall. So that is really good. I don't really have to say too much about that. I think that's a very well-known one. Number 6, 25 minutes and 12 seconds, is this EP, their debut EP from Shriekback called Tench. This features Barry Andrews, formerly of XTC, and Dave Allen, who was at one point a member of Gang of Four. There are 6 tracks on here, all very interesting. I've always loved Shriekback. I remember being in a record store in Toronto several years ago, and the woman who was in the store was saying that they had a hard time selling Shriekback records when I was seeing if they had anything I didn't have, which they didn't. That's kind of surprised me because I always felt they were really interesting. Now, I did make a note of what AllMusic said about this EP because I think it's really cool. They say, a strange mixture of techno science and swamp voodoo. Tench exists in a little netherworld all its own. The tracks range from funky and only slightly bizarre to bizarre and only slightly funky, and every step in between. It's not easy to find points of reference by which to describe the early Shriekback sound, but the most obvious touchstones are David Bowie and Brian Eno, and especially Bowie's Eno-produced Berlin period. Throw in a little P-Funk and James Brown on the low end, and you begin to get the idea. That kind of sort of makes sense to me. I wouldn't have picked up the Bowie Eno thing, but it's definitely funky and strange, and there's definitely some cool bass work going on here. They followed this up, of course, with Care, their first full length, and that was also excellent with the track all lined up, but this is really, really strong. Number 5, 26 minutes and 43 seconds, we have the Dukes of Stratosphere in 25 O'Clock. And this, of course, is simply XTC in disguise. This was released as being a long-lost 1960s psych album. So they nailed the cover here perfectly. I think that really sums up what the sound is like, and even the images on the back. Weirdly, this came out on April Fool's Day 1985, and it outsold the then most recent XTC record, The Big Express, which is really interesting to me. The band are known on here as Sir John Johns, The Red Curtain, Lord Cornelius Plum, and E.I.E.I. Owen. There's the track listing. So it starts with 25 o'clock, which is perfect. I mean, it could have come out. It sounds like it came out of the 60s. 25 o'clock. Fantastic psych track. Bike Ride to the Moon, also great. Makes me think of early Pink Floyd, maybe because of the bike component. My Love Explodes. What in the World, Your Gold Dress, The Mole from the Ministry, all really classic, excellent tracks. I think there was a CD that came out after this, which compiled some demos and whatnot. And then, of course, they followed this up with Sonic Sunspot, their full-length album. And then eventually people found out who they were. I don't know when that happened, but it was known that they're XTC. So that is cool. The only other Canadian band in here is Skinny Puppy. This is Remission. It's 24 minutes and 9 seconds over 6 tracks. 1984. It was released later on cassette with some extra tracks, but you have to love this album cover. What seems to be an unearthed skeleton and this cool skull here. Anyway, this is Remission. It has 6 tracks on 45 RPM. All of the Skinny Puppy early records were re-released on vinyl over the last few years. This is an original from 84. It's weirdly a side project of Images in Vogue, which is a Canadian new wave band, much smoother than this band. Kevin Key, I think his name in Images in Vogue was Kevin Compton. He started this project. One thing that might cause people to pause, give people pause here is the vocals on Skinny Puppy records. They're quite abrasive in many ways. But this is the first release, so it's a little more, I mean, it's electro-industrial synthy. They kind of lost a bit of the synth. Well, in some ways, they became more industrial as they went along. So this is probably more accessible than later stuff for some people, I suppose. Anyway, they're from Vancouver. On the Network label, which is a very famous Canadian label, which I love. Next is a classic that has to be on anyone's list of best EPs. It has 8 tracks for 1987. This is the Pixies' Come On Pilgrim. It only clocks in at 20 minutes and 29 seconds, so as you can guess, the tracks are brief in many cases. I've always been disturbed by this album cover. It's a Canadian pressing here from 1987, and this captivated me right away. I think it's exciting, it's electrifying, brilliant. You know, you got the holiday song, Nimrod's song, you got Caribou and others. Just amazing. I loved Frank Black's voice, the drumming, the guitar, Kim Deal's vocals in the background. Amazing. I just think this is an incredible record. And of course is on 4AD Vertigo. This is, as I mentioned, Canadian, so that label might look different if you're not in Canada, maybe. So that's excellent. I had to include that one. It's one of the first ones that occurred to me because it's so good. Now from 1993, one that pushes the definitions of length because it's 30 minutes and 51 seconds over 6 tracks. This came out in 1993. I bought it on compact disc, but there was a vinyl version in 1993 which I did not purchase, and I only got the vinyl version when I picked up this double pack from Sugar. This is Copper Blue bundled with Beaster, as you can see here, Beaster. So Bob Mould has described Beaster as Copper Blue's evil twin, and that makes absolute perfect sense because Sugar, this record, Copper Blue, has radio-friendly tracks that you maybe have heard on the radio, but Beaster is this sort of aggressive, angry flip side in some ways. And it has religious imagery in it as well. And this blood-stained rope here is kind of bizarre. But you have tracks like Come Around, Tilted, Judas Cradle, JC Auto, Feeling Better, Walk Away. And there's this nice liner notes here with some statements from people about this. Which I think this is, in some respects, this may be my favorite Sugar release is this mini album from Sugar. I think it's so good. It's just really, it harkens back to the Husker Du years, and I just think it's really great. So if you ever find this, if you don't have anything from Sugar, this is a good one to get. You can get the 2 sides. And I mentioned religious imagery, which you see here, of course, with this cross. And of course, because I showed that, I'm going to show you this, which is a weird promo sugar pack for Beaster, which comes with this booklet. And there's a kind of like an essay from Bob here. It's hard to read sometimes because it's dark text on, there's some shadows here, but that's a several page kind of essay. I guess this went to radio stations. It has the CD, which I also have separately, and it's called a short form album, 32 minutes of music. So they rounded it up and called it a short form album. And then it comes with these extra cards. So the religious image we saw already. There's another, what's upside down? Cross there. We have the flowers and then the bloodied ropes for Beaster. It says Beaster on the back. So that's kind of an interesting thing I found somewhere for almost no money, which I thought was kind of cool. So that's number 2. And number 1 is the shortest EP on the list. It only has 12 minutes and 46 seconds over 4 tracks. And this one will probably always be my favorite EP of all time. This is Joy Division, An Ideal for Living. Now, of course, this came out in 1978 at a time when they had switched, just after when they switched their name from Warsaw to Joy Division, and they changed their sound after this from this punk sound to something more post-punk. There are 4 tracks on here, and if you have the compact disc version of Substance, you will know these 4 tracks. I have the LP version of Substance too, and the original doesn't have these 4 tracks, but they put them on the CD version. Now, this is not an original pressing. This is the 2014 Record Store Day limited edition pressing, but I think they were over 13,000 copies. So just for fun, I looked up what the originals were worth. Now, it came out on a 7-inch EP in 1978 with a different cover. Now, that cover had a member of the Hitler Youth playing a drum on the cover, and so that caused some people to question what sort of political stance Joy Division had. But if you can find that on Discogs, the current median selling price is $1,800. Now, wouldn't it be nice to find one of those? But weirdly, there are 4 copies for sale on Discogs right now, starting at $10,878. Can you imagine that? If I found that, I would sell it. The original 12-inch has this cover, and the median sale price is $750, but there are 5 copies for sale from $1,700. Can you believe that? I just find that amazing. So anyway, this is, and will probably forever be my favorite 12-inch EP. You can see the Record Store Day there. So that's it. I'm curious what you think about those. I know that if you're a punk fan, I have kind of ignored punk because a lot of those came out on 7-inch, and I don't have a big collection of punk, but I'd be curious to hear what yours are. And once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.